Now what we've done so far is pretty good. We can use variables now to change the MAC address to any MAC address we want easily and to any interface. But every time the user wants to change these variables, they have to open the code, they have to open the program and modify its code manually, which is not very good. It'll be nicer if we can get the user to input the variables that they want through the terminal. So there are a number of ways to do that. And in this lecture, we're going to talk about the input function. So all we have to do is just use the input function like so, put a string that will be displayed to the user. So for example, ask for your age, and then initialize that to be stored in a variable called anything we want. And in this example, we're calling it age. Then the user is going to see this, what's your age? If they input, for example, 10, then 10 will be stored in this variable, and then we can print it. Again, this is very boring. So what we're going to do is we're going to use something within our cool code and ask the user to enter the interface and the new MAC and then use it in here. So we already have a variable called interface, and all we have to do, instead of initializing it like this, we want the user to put this value for us. So instead of initializing it and saying ETH0 here, we're going to say the interface is going to equal to the input that the user will give me. And inside this, we're going to put the text that the user will see. So we're going to ask for the interface. Same goes for the MAC. So instead of initializing the MAC within the code like this, we're going to say new MAC is going to equal to, and I want that to be taken from the user input. So we're using the input function, and I want the user to see a message asking for the new MAC. So in that message, I'm going to say new MAC. And that's it. We're going to store this, and let's run it and see what it's going to look like. So Python macchanger.py. And as you can see, the program will not execute further code. It'll stop and it'll first ask me for the interface. So whenever I put LAN 0 in here, this will automatically initialize interface to LAN 0 because we said interface equals input, and I'm given the input in here. So the user is given the input themselves through the terminal. Now if I hit enter, now we got an error because this is actually a Python 3 function. So we have to say Python 3 in here, because if you just type Python, it'll run with Python 2.7. So we'll run this again. It's asking me for the interface. We set that to LAN 0. Now the code will stop again and it asks me for the new MAC. So we're gonna set that to 00, 11, 22, 33, 44, and I'm gonna go for 44 again to just use something different to make sure that this code is gonna work. And now the code has already initialized interface with LAN 0. Once I hit enter, it's gonna initialize new MAC with the value that I just inputted, which is the new MAC. Then it's gonna use it in here and in here exactly the same way as before. So let's hit enter and see what happens. It's printing the right print statement for us. So it's telling us that it's changing MAC address for LAN 0 to this MAC address. So again, the print statement, it's a really good way of knowing that interface and new MAC actually hold the values that we want. So they hold the values that the user did actually input. Because when your code gets more complicated, you can make mistakes and maybe the variables will not hold the value that you expect them to hold. So let's do ifconfig LAN 0 and see if the MAC changed. And as you can see, it actually did get changed to the MAC address that we want. Now, going back to this error, we got this because we were running the code using Python 2.7, not Python 3. And like I said, these two versions are very, very similar. So if you want this code to run with Python 2.7, all you have to do is just type row input instead of input. So it's just the function has a different name. So we change that to row input, and we change that to row input. Going down, and we're just gonna run it this time with Python, not Python 3. Hit enter, ask me for the interface. Let's set it to ETH0 this time, and set the new MAC to 001122334422. Hit enter. We get the right values in the print statement, the right interface, and the right MAC address. And if we do ifconfig ETH0, you can see the MAC address changed to 4422, the same MAC address that we set in here. So this just goes to show you that Python 2.7 and 3 are very similar. Once you know one of them, you can use the other. So that's it for this lecture. I just wanted to introduce the input or the row input function that allows the user to initialize variables or interact with the program through the terminal. So when they actually run the program, instead of having to manually modify the code every time they need to change a variable.